In this video, I'm going to be going over my recent experience purchasing a Chibson. If you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with these knockoff cheap Chibsons that you can buy from China, from sites like DHgate. So I'm going to go over my experience with the purchase and how my experience has been since receiving it. Now I purchased it, I think in February, and I just got it 4 weeks ago. So it took a good 4 to 5 months to get here. But of course there's a pandemic going on and things like that. So I know that certainly at the beginning of the year, things were a little bit slowed down. But when I took this thing out of its case for the first time, I actually laughed out loud for a while. There were some things about it that really cracked me up. So I'm going to go over the negatives that I have found with this guitar, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the positives, and we're going to go ahead and take a listen. Now I have done some work on this guitar since receiving it, because when I got it, it honestly wasn't playable. It was kind of it was a joke, honestly. Now I have made it so it's at least playable. It's never going to be a good guitar. And I knew that going into it, and if you buy one of these, I think that you should go into it knowing that, with the expectation that it's a nice opportunity to be able to modify something, or like for this one example, I'm thinking about relicking it. So, you know, it's never going to be an awesome guitar that you're going to want to go, you know, recording a bunch of things with, but for the money, it's a kind of a neat experience. All right, so first off, I'd like to say that I definitely do not agree with the idea of making knockoff, you know, merchandise like this. Not a good practice. I would never sell this guitar, and I would certainly never sell it and try to pass it as a Gibson. I honestly don't think, other than online sales, that one of these could ever pass as a Gibson, because it's not even close. But that being said, I asked them to leave off the Made in USA on the back of the headstock. They did not, so that is there. If I ever were to sell it or anything like that, I'm thinking about scratching that off, or maybe scratching fake into the back of the headstock or something like that. But you know, overall from a distance, it looks fairly convincing. One thing that you'll notice, speaking of the back of the headstock, I don't know if you can tell, but the tuners are, I mean, looks like someone was a little bit intoxicated when they put these on. It's kind of goofy. They're very crooked and all kind of, this one looks like it's way off. Anyway, not a big deal. I mean, as far as playing goes, it actually stays in tune relatively well for what it is. But the truss rod on this one actually did work really well. I had read online some people say that they get one without truss rod, but this one came and was actually fairly close to being reasonable when I got it, but I had to tweak a little bit, but it was a smooth, and it worked out pretty well. Now the big thing that, and I have to show this to you, this is the original nut that came on this guitar. This is an absolute joke. I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well on here, but it looks like someone carved out a piece of cheap plastic with a knife, is kind of the best way I can describe it. It was not set up properly. The nut height was way too high. So yeah, it was kind of a joke, to the point where it was unplayable. So another thing that I found to be quite terrible was the, I don't know if I might take a picture of this and put it in the video, because I don't know that you're going to be able to see this, but the frets, most of them are not actually in, you know, all the way seated. It looks like they just kind of fit them in there and left them. I mean, it's, you know, because of that, they were completely unlevel. I did do a fret level and recrown on these, And now it actually is decent. It doesn't buzz or anything like that, but I would imagine any of these that you get, you're going to have to do some fret work to them to make them very playable at all. I also got a kick out of this. The rhythm and treble was flipped upside down when I got it, which I thought was funny. The thing was covered in wood shavings, as though they packed it up right next to some piece of machine that was cutting wood, and they just left it like that, which was pretty awful. The pickups, these are actually Epiphone pickups from the 90s, but so these sound okay. The pickups that came on this guitar were basically unusable. Now, I'm not being a pickup snob. They were unusable. I mean, they sounded. The best thing I could say about them was that they were a pickup. So I switched those out immediately, wanting to keep it as a budget guitar. So I put some Epiphone pickups in it, and they sound fine. So the knobs work fine. It was actually wired properly. I kind of wasn't even expecting it to be wired properly, but it was. I'm sure they're not the highest quality knobs, but they work. So another thing I thought was funny, again, I don't know if you can see this very well, but the plates do not actually really fit. There's a huge gap here, but again, minor detail, doesn't affect the playability. The wood on the back looks decent. It looks like it's a 3-piece body. Another thing I got kind of a kick out of, looks like they did the binding incorrectly, and right here, again, I don't know if you can see that, but where they had the binding go a little bit too far, they just used some paint that kind of matched. It looks like a marker. It looks like they just took a marker and painted over it, which I found a little bit entertaining. Anyway, from a distance, it looks okay. It plays now. Now the big problem with this thing is the intonation. This is not cut in the proper place. And this is kind of a big deal. Even if you're just wanting a budget guitar to play for fun, it's not a lot of fun to play if, as you're working your way up the fretboard, it sounds like it's out of tune. I mean, that kind of ruins it. And unfortunately, I don't know if you can see this, but I have, as I was trying to intonate it, I had to move all the saddles as far as I could this way to try to basically keep it in tune up the fretboard. And what happened was, on every single string, I had to move it as far forward as I possibly could, and even then, it's not quite intonated yet. Some of the strings are, and I'll play this for you here in a second, and you can hear it. Some of the strings are, but there are quite a few of them, 4 or 5, that no matter how far this way I get it, it's still flat. So it gets flat up the fretboard, and it just doesn't sound great. Again, though, I mean, if you're just wanting a budget guitar to customize or mess around with, this one, and to be fair, this was the absolute cheapest Chibson Les Paul that I could find at the time. So I think it was $170 including shipping. So this is as cheap as it gets. I mean, I think that you would probably get a more playable guitar if you got a cheap Epiphone. I'll have to show you that one. Or actually, I've got here a Lotus Les Paul style guitar. This is, I think, from the 80s, and it actually plays really well. The neck is actually a little bit twisted on it, but somehow it actually stays in tune. You can intonate it. It's very playable, and I think that you can buy these used online for $200. I think something like this would honestly be a much better route to go if you were thinking about spending, in the $200 range for a Les Paul style guitar. I think that this is a really solid guitar. The I will say this is not a maple cap. In fact, I think the whole body of it is like a plywood is kind of what it seemed like when I was looking at it. It just flat out looked like plywood. So this is not a real solid wood guitar. This one does appear to be, from what I can tell, a solid piece of mahogany. Not solid piece, 3 pieces, but it is mahogany. It's not like, you know, particle board or anything like that. And the cap does seem to be a different piece. I don't know for sure if it's maple or not. I haven't dug down to see if this is just a veneer or not, but either way, again, this is a very budget guitar, so I'm not going to be too picky on that. And I did replace the nut with a bone nut. And since doing the fret leveling, adjusting the truss rod a little bit, and replacing the nut with a bone nut, it actually plays pretty well. It's enjoyable to play. Again, it doesn't stay perfectly intonated, but other than that, it's not a bad little guitar. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and we can kind of see how it sounds, and maybe you can pick up on a little of those intonation issues. All right, we are plugged into an Ignator Tweaker 15 head. So I'm going to kind of show you what it sounds like a little bit. Again, this is with the cheapest Epiphone pickups you could buy. I bought them used for $20. So again, keeping in line with the budget theme here. So it sounds all right when you've got some distortion on it and, you know, rocking out. Now the problem is, so I don't know if you can tell, but I just tuned up all the strings, so the strings are spot on in tune. Now if you listen to the intonation here, you can tell they're all a little bit flat when you get to the 12th fret. Now again, I have this, I even flipped it around from what it was so that I could actually get these saddles just a little bit further. So they're as far as they can possibly go without re-drilling holes in this guitar, and it still is not intonated properly. So that's the real, you know, the real issue when you're talking about getting something like this. If you buy like you know, some kind of cheap Epiphone used, like Les Paul Special or something, you can pick those up for 150, 200 bucks. And you're gonna get a guitar where the holes are drilled in the proper place, so you can actually intonate it. So that's the problem. Now again, not a huge deal if you're just looking for something to mess around with. It feels like a fun guitar. The neck doesn't feel the same as an actual, you know, Gibson, certainly. It also is a little bit different profile than most of the Epiphones that I've played. So it's kind of in a weird league of its own as far as the feel of the neck and everything goes. But it is fun to play. You know, once you actually get some decent, even cheap pickups in it, it's a fine budget player. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've been thinking about getting one of these or have gotten one of these, go ahead and share your experience in the comments section. I'd love to hear your experience and what you thought of your Chibson. Anyway, thank you for watching this video.